Dude, we are going to energize the country.
Stop Brexit.
No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Another future's possible, but we've got to fight for it.
Order!
Hello and welcome to the Debated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Will, and I'm joined by my co-host, Conrad.
Hello.
And in this YouTube special of the podcast, in this first part, we're joined by Buckley from ADoseOfBuckley, a extremely engaging YouTube channel that you may have heard of that covers a variety of subjects. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
So the first question that I'd like to ask is, what first prompted you to make commentary videos?
Well, it's one of those things, where I was just an outspoken person in general in, real life, I guess, as opposed to YouTube, which is fake life, right? And so I was doing that, and it was, about 2009, and I went to school for radio broadcasting as well. So I have a bit of a background in being in front of a microphone. And so people were like, oh, you should do like a podcast or something like that. I'm like, I don't really want to do like a half-hour-long podcast. Like, I don't think that I want to really do that. And at the time, what I was trying to do was make my I guess we'll call them bits, very similar to radio bits. They'd just be short, sort of little looks at, things that are going on in society and pop culture. And so I was doing that. I was doing them as audio. And then I decided, what the hell, I'll try putting them on YouTube, because that's where, obviously there's a much larger audience. And that started getting some traction. And the original idea was to get the people from YouTube to come to my website. Didn't work out that way. No one wants to leave YouTube. So I just said, you know what, then, hey, am I allowed to swear on this thing or what? Yeah. All right. Then I said, fuck it. I'm just going to go ahead and put them on YouTube full time from now on. Everything will just go on there. Keeps it simple. One place for everyone to find all of my shit. Right. So, yeah, you've done videos on a wide range of topics, a lot on music and a lot on sort of culture and things going on. And you've made, you make comedy, you make jokes. Do you think there's anything that is off limits for comedy, or do you think that anything can be made fun of if you've got the right sort of joke about it?
I think if you do it right, there's really nothing that you can't joke about. My sort of go-to with that is Anthony Jeselnik does, I don't know if it was his last special or the special before that. I think it was the last one though. Does a like 20-minute bit about taking a girl to an abortion clinic, and the average person might be like, oh my God, you can't do a 20-minute joke about taking a girl to an abortion clinic. There's not even a 30-second joke about that that's funny. And I would beg to disagree if you watched that special. But I think that it all depends on how you make the joke, who the target is, things like that. Because yeah, sure, people will say, oh, you can't make jokes about rape, for example, right? It's off limits. However, what they mean is you can't make jokes about people who have been raped or victims of rape, right? That's who you can't make jokes about. But if you're making jokes about, either the subject, or you're making jokes about, especially, or about rapists or things like that, if they're the target of the joke, then I think that you can make those jokes, and it can be done in a way that isn't, I guess, harmful, or that isn't intended to make fun of a very specific group of people or a specific person, which is always what it actually comes down to, right? When people say, oh, you can't make jokes about that because that happened to me, then what they're saying is, so I can't make jokes about you specifically. And I'm not making jokes about you specifically. I don't know you. You know what I mean? So I think that's where that lands.
You talk about making jokes about people specifically, but of course, one of the things that you excel at is making jokes about specific people, particularly celebrities. I just wonder, right, do you think that there's something cathartic for you and the viewers to be able to make jokes about people like politicians like Donald Trump, say like Kim Kardashian, whoever, because there isn't, it's not someone it's someone who you probably never meet, but who may do something stupid that you can ridicule.
I think to a certain degree, one of the rules I always kind of put forth to myself on my own channel is, for the most part, I would never make fun of someone who was, and this is going to sound like so up my own ass, and I fucking totally appreciate that, but is that I never make fun of anyone who is less famous than I am, which shouldn't be hard, okay? Like, I'm fucking nobody, right? But at the same time, there's sort of a funny, I guess, way to look at it, where if I'm making fun of someone who has less followers than me, it's bullying. If I make fun of someone who has more followers than me, well, then it's just criticism,
Now, you've been making videos for 10 years now.
Yep.
So, on your most recent video, you mentioned that you'd sort of changed your mind about YouTube's algorithm and how it affects subscribers seeing your content. Are there any other things that you feel like you've changed your mind about, or other old videos that you think you've got a different view on now than when you made them?
Probably. I don't know about a ton off the top of my head, but one actually that did come to mind recently, sort of because someone had commented on it. I get a lot of that. I'll see, for people who are YouTube creators, then you've got the like little alert, and you can see when comments have been posted on your stuff. And for the most part, a lot of it gets drowned out, but every now and then I click on it. And one of the ones I had seen recently was a video I had done where I talked about, I don't know what the exact title of the video is anymore, to be honest, but it was me talking about going to work sick. And, it was about people who, I don't know, I probably called people pussies for calling in sick to go to work and things like that, right? And someone, of course, had commented the mimetic, this aged terribly comment, right? And it was, it's kind of funny because I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I mean, especially now when you think about the old COVID-19 and everything like that, I think that a lot of people's minds have changed on the subject of calling in sick to go to, or not going to work sick and things like that. It used to be not that long ago, really, a sort of like, tough it out. You're British, right? So, stiff upper lip, right? You just, you power through it. You fucking get through your goddamn life, right? But like now we're realizing, especially in certain situations, certain jobs, right? Do you really want a server or a fast food cook or a chef at a restaurant coming in, sneezing into your food or fucking coughing into it or whatever, and then you end up having to eat that?
Do you think that the way that you deal with topics that are specifically YouTube related, like, for example, what's happening with H3H3 and Keemstar at the moment, or anything that the polls have done, for example, is different from when you tackle things related to politicians? Or do you not see any difference in the way that you construct jokes or think about the topics?
Not that I can really think of, I guess. Like, essentially, yeah, a topic is a topic, and the way I sort of decide whether I'm going to take on any sort of topic is, first things first, is there at least, you start with one joke. Is there at least one joke in here that I think is funny, that I think other people will think is funny? Which I think is a lot of, I'm going to be a bit of a hypocrite in a little bit of a way here first, because I've said before that as a content creator, the first thing you should worry about is, would you like it? Is it something that you think is good? Because if you don't like it, then no one is going to. But then you still do have to think about, to a certain degree, is anyone else going to find this funny? Or is this just some inside joke between you and your friends? Because if it's just some inside joke between you and your friends, there's a good chance that no one is going to fucking laugh at that joke. But anyway, yeah, so that's whether it's about Trump or whether it's about, YouTube algorithms, or whether it's about, Kim Kardashian, which was a topic that I covered a couple weeks ago, or whatever the case may be. It starts with, I see a headline, I read a news article. Is there something funny in here? Do I have at least one joke? And then can I build on that? Is there more jokes? Or is this going to be, sometimes I take a little bit more of a serious approach to a video. I'm sure that if you looked at something like my George Zimmerman video or videos, I think I did a couple videos about that guy. And, I don't know how many jokes there are. Some of it is a little bit more serious. And so, yeah, I think sometimes a serious topic may get a little bit more of a serious approach. But at the same time, there will still be the odd joke or two kind of peppered in to remind people, hey, this is still at the end of the day, some asshole in Canada's opinion about something, and it's meant for the purposes of entertainment. And I think that that's where things get lost between like opinion talking heads on the news, people like Tucker Carlson, who people think is a newscaster or something like that. And it's like, no, Tucker Carlson's not a newscaster. He's an entertainer providing his opinion on a news station, and there's a huge difference. And so I always want to try and at least keep that barrier between me. I don't think anyone's ever mistaken me for a news person before, but every now and then you get someone who comments things like, "Oh man, I get like all of my news through you," and I'm like, "Oh, that's bad. Like, don't do that. Get your news from actual news and not some fucking guy on the internet who's calling Katy Perry a cunt." You know what I mean?
Now, recently, with what's been going on after the death of George Floyd, we've seen quite a lot of celebrities, voicing their opinions on it. What's your views on celebrities getting involved in politics? Not necessarily in this circumstance, but more generally. Do you think that it's something that should happen more often, or is it something that sort of can be preachy?
Well, it's hard to say, right? I mean, what's the difference between the average person doing it on their Twitter and fucking some celebrity doing it on their Twitter is about 20 million followers, right? And, that's the sort of, I don't know, weird hypocrisy of it, is that's the difference, is that they're not, I mean, sometimes some celebrities are, right? Some celebrities are a lot preachier. They're like, this is what you should be doing, or you have to do this, or you're not a true ally or whatever the fuck, right? But there are some who are just voicing their opinions, right? And I don't see the difference between, them voicing their opinions, because otherwise, what have you followed that celebrity for anyway? Because it's always funny, because if it was I don't know, Chris Pratt, right? And if it was Chris Pratt doing, and his whole Twitter was nothing but him promoting his next movie, his next TV show, his next whatever the fuck he's doing, people will be like, "Oh, this is stupid. I don't want to fucking look at this." The reason that people follow celebrities on social media is because you want that inside look at their real lives, right? It's as old as fucking, I mean, they basically just took all the power away from the paparazzi to a certain degree, to present it in their own way, their own lives in their own way, right? But it's just sort of, so then when they express an opinion or something that you don't agree with, and that's usually where it comes to, right? Is that someone expresses an opinion that's too liberal or too conservative, and then the public that doesn't side with that goes, "Oh, you should shut the fuck up about politics." Now, I can't say this doesn't happen, but I personally have not seen too many examples of, someone expressing their, what's the fucking word I'm looking for? They want to show off that they support Black Lives Matter. You're not going to see a person that also supports Black Lives Matter going, "Oh, shut the fuck up about your politics. I just follow you for movies." No one's doing that, right?
Do you think that your politics ever influences your comedy at all? Or do you keep your own political opinions separate from when you're making jokes, so as not to perhaps influence the direction that your comedy takes?
Well, I think I would be lying if I said that I keep it out entirely. And, you know, but the funny thing is that my politics, at least according to my audience, are whatever they think they are on any given day, right? So, I mean, I've expressed opinions that could be considered more right-wing leaning. I've expressed opinions that could be considered more left-wing leaning. Ultimately, I don't identify either side personally. I think it's a big waste of time, and I don't think that saying you are this side or that side is helpful, because what that means is then, are you saying that you aren't willing to bend on the fact that maybe your side gets it wrong sometimes, and everyone's side gets it wrong sometimes? It's just the nature of it. There's no way that the left is 100% right all the time, or that the right is 100% right all the time, right? There's more to life than that. And so when it comes to my own comedy, I've tried to be comfortable with making fun of things that even I agree, or like that I agree with. You know what I mean? I've made jokes about celebrities I like. I've made jokes about political views that I like or that I agree with, or things like that. And of course, I've made lots of jokes about the other side of that too, right? So I think though that, yeah, it certainly, it's going to seep in. It's going to seep in no matter what you're doing. I think that, you can't read anything anymore. You can't read a fucking video game news website without, some sort of a political view seeping in, or a perceived political view seeping in, because now everyone has decided that everything has a line between it, right? Like I wouldn't be surprised if there's someone out there who thinks that people who play Animal Crossing must be liberal. There's no way that a conservative would play Animal Crossing. That's a liberal game, and me as a conservative would never play a game that's meant for liberals. When it's like, it's a fucking video game, man. What the hell are you talking about? But
so I meant to mention earlier about YouTube's algorithms and how they sort of affect sort of showing content to subscribers. And there's also been a lot of stuff about demonetization of certain content that might be political or controversial. What's your views on how YouTube has handled this?
Well, it's, I don't know. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because, I mean, I've seen, talking about YouTube, talking about all of them, right? Twitter's talking about, or Twitter recently flagged a couple of Trump's posts, right, as either intentionally inciting violence, or being false news, or things like that. And when you see things like that with YouTube as well, that they are apparently suppressing anything that might have to do with COVID-19, because what if it's another conspiracy theory? Or there was that, I never watched it, but there was that conspiracy theory video by some ex-doctor who I guess YouTube deleted, and it keeps getting deleted every time someone tries to repost it, but obviously they can only, do so much. And I think that I've my stance previously on this, and to a certain degree, is still that they're a private company, and at the end of the day, it's not about freedom of speech. You could go on to any street corner, in any free country to a certain degree, and start yelling whatever you want about whatever your views are. You can go, you could start your own website and do that, or you can, find a political outlet that does agree with you, that will let you post your opinions there, or things like that. And certainly, it's not a matter of, it's freedom of speech that's being suppressed because YouTube doesn't want me to post this, right? It's up to them. And I think that, yes, perhaps it goes to it goes down a bit of a slippery slope of then what? And if YouTube is the only game in town, then because at the moment there's no one as big as YouTube, right? So if they are controlling everything that can be talked about. But I think at the same time, and they're going to get it wrong, and they're going to get it wrong a lot, but they are going to get it right sometimes. And I think that there may be good reasons sometimes for removing certain viewpoints from certain platforms, you know. And I think, for example, you know, if the president of the United States goes on to Twitter and instead of, because he's always real clever about it, but if he just went on if he went on Twitter and said, you know, I'm calling on all police officers to shoot every protester they see, like, are we saying, oh, that's freedom of speech, we should let him say that? No, we shouldn't fucking let him say that. That's absolute insanity. So I think that there is certainly times, and we already have these things set up. I mean, freedom of speech is a bullshit concept everywhere. In the United States, in Canada, in the UK, there are already rules that govern what you can and cannot say. And hate speech, for example, is generally one of those things. You know, and then depending on the country or depending on the area, things like, you know, inciting violence or, you know, just things like that you just can't do or say, and that supersede any freedom of speech laws or some fucking thing that a bunch of dandies wrote in the 1500s or wherever the fuck they did it. You know what I mean?
Your most popular series, perhaps your most popular series, is Musical Autopsies. And I wonder, how much do you think politics influences the creation of music and the music industry?
Well, I think to a certain degree it has for a long time, if not always, right? I mean, you look at probably half the songs that were played at Woodstock in '69 were fucking political as hell, right? It all depends on, of course, the person or the artist, and there's certainly, to a certain degree, pop artists that will never touch anything political, at least directly, but indirectly, right? I mean, it sort of determines, or it all depends on what you decide is political, right? And I think that obviously, you know, someone might say it's not a political stance to say that we shouldn't treat gay people any differently than straight people, right? I think that you know, that should just be a given, maybe. That's just me, you know. That's you know, it's a real controversial opinion, but that's just me. I don't think that maybe we shouldn't treat gay people differently than straight people. But there are people who don't think that and would call me a liberal for expressing that opinion. And it's like, I don't think that's a liberal opinion. I think that's just maybe something that you should just treat human beings with some fucking a certain level of dignity and respect. But so I would suggest then that if you're going to define it at that level, which is a pretty low bar to set, then almost every song is political in some way, because there's lots that express a certain viewpoint. I mean, you could suggest then that all rap, to a certain degree, is pretty liberal, because it all suggests, you know, flagrant drug use and being able to fuck whoever you want and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, those are pretty liberal views, right?
We're coming up to the end of our time speaking. It's been great speaking to you, Buckley. And I've got one final question for you. If there was any topic that you get requested a lot that you don't really want to talk about, but you keep getting it requested, and you could instantly stop people requesting it of you and sending you messages about, what would it be?
I think it's not a serious problem, but so you're familiar with I Hate Everything, I'm sure, and his he used to get the like, do I hate Mars bars, right? And I think my version of do I hate Mars bars is, what are your thoughts on Eminem? I get that. I've been getting that for pretty much as long as my channel has existed. Is, you know, what's your opinion on Eminem? What are your thoughts on Eminem? And at this point now, I'm basically just not answering it out of spite. So,
well, I hope anyone listening who may be a fan of yours and thinks about sending you that kind of message will think again now. Thank you once again for coming on and joining us.
well, thank you for having me.